Let me tell you something. There's never going to be a perfect time to get things done. There's never going to be a moment when everything in your life aligns just right, when you wake up every day with energy, excitement, enthusiasm to do the work that needs to be done. No, life doesn't work like that. The real test isn't when you feel motivated, it's when you don't. It's when you're tired, when you're uninspired, when distractions are pulling you in every direction. That's when discipline separates the winners from the quitters. Successful people don't wait for motivation to strike. They create it. They don't sit around hoping for inspiration to magically appear. They get up, they start moving, and they build momentum. Action creates energy. The moment you start, something shifts. Your mind wakes up, your body follows, and before you know it, you're in motion. Think about it. Have you ever forced yourself to do something even when you didn't feel like it? Maybe a workout, maybe a project, and by the time you got into it, you realized, hey, this isn't so bad after all. That's because action changes your state of mind. You don't wait to feel good to work. You work and then you feel good. The secret is this. Don't negotiate with yourself. Don't entertain that little voice in your head that says maybe later, maybe tomorrow. No! Decide, commit, move. If you give yourself an option to quit, you will take it. But if you make work a non-negotiable, it becomes who you are. And once you develop that identity of someone who shows up no matter what, everything changes. Discipline is a muscle, and like any muscle, it strengthens with use. Every time you push through resistance, every time you take action despite your feelings, you're training yourself for success. You're developing the kind of character that gets things done, no matter the circumstances. So the next time you don't feel like working, remind yourself your feelings don't control you, your choices do. You can take control of your mind, your habits, your actions, and when you do, you'll look back and realize that the greatest breakthroughs didn't come when you felt like working. They came when you worked despite not feeling like it. Motivation is a great feeling, but it's unreliable. It comes and goes like the weather, often leaving us stranded when we need it most. If you wait until you feel motivated to do the work, you'll be waiting forever. That's where discipline comes in. Discipline is the force that keeps you moving forward even when every part of you wants to stop. It's the key difference between those who succeed and those who fall short. The truth is, successful people don't always feel like working. They don't wake up every morning bursting with energy, excited to tackle their goals. They struggle just like everyone else. They get tired, bored, and distracted. But what sets them apart is that they don't let those feelings dictate their actions. They have trained themselves to work despite how they feel. Discipline is not about doing what's easy. It's about doing what's necessary, whether you feel like it or not. It's making the tough choices, choosing to sit down and work instead of scrolling through your phone, choosing to hit the gym instead of sleeping in, choosing to read and learn instead of wasting time on meaningless distractions. The more you make these choices, the stronger your discipline becomes. One of the biggest misconceptions people have is that discipline is something you either have or you don't. That's not true. Discipline is a skill, and like any skill, it can be built and strengthened over time. Every time you push yourself to do something hard, you reinforce the habit of discipline. Every time you resist the temptation to quit, you become stronger. It's like a muscle. The more you train it, the more powerful it becomes. Most people believe they need to feel inspired before they act, but the reality is action comes first and motivation follows. Think about the times when you forced yourself to start a task even when you didn't want to, and somewhere along the way you found yourself engaged and focused. That's because movement creates momentum. The hardest part is always getting started, but once you do, the energy kicks in. Discipline is about mastering that initial resistance and pushing through anyway. Discipline is also about keeping commitments to yourself. Every time you say you're going to do something and follow through, you build trust in yourself. You prove to yourself that you are capable of sticking to your word. On the other hand, every time you break a commitment, every time you let an excuse win, you weaken that trust. You start to doubt yourself. You start believing that you're someone who gives up easily, and that belief affects everything you do. That's why it's so important to make discipline a non-negotiable part of your life. You don't ask yourself, do I feel like working today? You don't debate whether you should go to the gym or not. You just do it. You treat your goals like obligations, not options. And the more you do that, the more natural it becomes. Eventually, discipline stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like a habit, like a part of who you are. It won't be easy at first. Your mind will fight back. It will try to convince you to take the easy way out, to put things off until tomorrow. But the more you resist that urge, the weaker it gets. Over time, you'll reach a point where working hard isn't something you have to force yourself to do. It's just what you do. And that is when you unlock true success. Getting started is often the hardest part of any task. When you don't feel like working, it's easy to tell yourself that you'll start later, when you're more motivated. But that's the problem. Motivation is unreliable. It comes and goes, and if you wait for it, you may never get anything done. The secret to productivity is understanding that action creates energy. The moment you take that first step, no matter how small, you set a process in motion that makes it easier to keep going. Think about the times when you've dreaded starting a task. Maybe it was a workout, a project, or a difficult assignment. At first, you felt sluggish, uninterested, and resistant, but the moment you forced yourself to begin, just by putting on your workout clothes, typing the first few words, or making the first move, something shifted. The resistance started to fade. Your energy levels rose. You found yourself in motion, and before you knew it, you were engaged in the task. This isn't a coincidence. It's a psychological and physiological response to action. When you move, your brain releases chemicals that help you focus and stay engaged. It's why athletes feel more energetic once they start training, and why writers find themselves in a flow state after pushing through the initial struggle of getting words on the page. Your mind and body respond to movement. This is why waiting for motivation is a mistake. You don't need motivation to act. You need to act first, and the motivation will follow. This principle applies to everything in life. The more you sit around thinking about doing something, the more overwhelming it seems. But the moment you take action, your perspective changes. The task isn't as intimidating as you thought. The energy you were waiting for arrives not before you start, but after. This is why successful people develop the habit of acting even when they don't feel like it. They know that the simple act of starting is enough to generate the momentum needed to keep going. Small actions can be incredibly powerful. If you don't feel like going to the gym, just commit to putting on your workout clothes and walking for 5 minutes. If you don't feel like working on a project, tell yourself you'll do it for just 10 minutes. Often you'll find that once you stop, you don't want to stop. That's because taking action shifts your mindset from resistance to engagement. The biggest mistake people make is believing they need to feel inspired before they act. This belief creates a cycle of procrastination where you keep waiting for the right mood, the right time, or the right energy. But the right time never comes on its own. You create it by taking the first step. Action, no matter how small, is the trigger that breaks the cycle and puts you in control. This is why habits and routines are so important. When you have a routine, you eliminate the need to decide whether or not to act. You just do it. You don't think about whether you feel like brushing your teeth. You just do it because it's a habit. The same logic applies to work, exercise, learning, in any area where you want to be consistent. By developing routines that force you into action, you bypass the need for motivation altogether. The moment you start negotiating with yourself, you lose. That inner voice that whispers, maybe later, maybe tomorrow, or just 5 more minutes of rest, is the voice of resistance. And if you entertain it, it will always win. The most disciplined and successful people don't give themselves the option to back out. They don't wake up in the morning and ask themselves, do I feel like working today? They don't debate whether or not they should go to the gym, work on their goals, or push through discomfort. They simply do it because it's non-negotiable. The problem with giving yourself a choice is that your mind will always take the easier route. It's natural to seek comfort and avoid discomfort. That's how our brains are wired, to conserve energy, to avoid struggle, to take the path of least resistance. But success, growth, and progress all require effort, discomfort, and pushing past resistance. If you let your feelings dictate your actions, you'll find yourself trapped in a cycle of procrastination, excuses, and missed opportunities. Think about the times when you've had a goal but allowed negotiation to creep in. Maybe you planned to wake up early to exercise, but when the alarm went off, your mind started bargaining. Just 10 more minutes. Then 10 minutes turned into 30, and suddenly you skipped the workout entirely. Or maybe you promised yourself you'd sit down and work on an important task, but then you started telling yourself, I'll do it later when I feel more focused, but later never comes, and the task remains unfinished. This is the danger of negotiation. It allows your mind to talk you out of doing what needs to be done. One of the most powerful mental shifts you can make is to remove the option of negotiation altogether. When something is non-negotiable, you don't waste time debating it. You don't sit around deciding whether or not you should take action. You just do it. And when you operate this way, you eliminate hesitation, reduce procrastination, and become incredibly consistent in your efforts. The best way to stop negotiating with yourself is to make decisions in advance. If you decide the night before that you're waking up at 6 a.m. to work out, then when the alarm rings, you don't engage in a conversation with yourself. You don't entertain thoughts of staying in bed. You get up and do what you committed to. The same applies to work. If you set a time to start working, you don't check social media, you don't delay, you sit down and begin. The less you allow room for excuses, the more disciplined you become. One of the most effective strategies to eliminate negotiation is to create routines and habits that make taking action automatic. When something becomes a habit, you don't rely on willpower or motivation. It just becomes part of your daily life. Just like you don't question whether or not to brush your teeth, you can train yourself to not question whether or not to work on your goals. You create a system where action is expected, not optional. Another key to stopping self-negotiation is to focus on your long-term vision rather than your short-term feelings. Your feelings in the moment will always try to pull you toward comfort, but your vision reminds you why you need to act. The bigger your purpose, the easier it becomes to override momentary resistance. When you remind yourself why your goals matter, whether it's for financial freedom, better health, personal growth, or success, you give yourself a reason to push through. At the end of the day, discipline is about training yourself to act regardless of how you feel. The more you practice this, the stronger your ability to push through discomfort becomes. And once you remove negotiation from the equation, you take full control of your actions, your habits, and ultimately your success. Your identity shapes your actions more than anything else. If you see yourself as someone who procrastinates, avoids hard work, or gives up when things get tough, your actions will reflect that belief. But if you see yourself as someone who is disciplined, consistent, and committed, you will naturally act in ways that align with that identity. This is why success isn't just about what you do, it's about who you believe you are. Most people try to change their actions without changing their self-pitching. They set goals like, I want to exercise more, or I want to be more productive. But deep down, they still see themselves as someone who struggles with consistency. That's why after a few days of effort, they slip back into old habits. Their identity hasn't changed, so their actions don't stick. The real key to lasting discipline is shifting how you see yourself. When your identity aligns with your goals, discipline becomes effortless. Think about people who are naturally fit. They don't wake up every morning debating whether or not they should exercise. They don't need to force themselves to eat healthy. They do it because that's who they are. A musician doesn't have to remind themselves to practice their instrument. It's part of their identity. The same applies to successful entrepreneurs, writers, and high achievers. Their habits are a reflection of their self-image. They see themselves as someone who shows up and does the work no matter what. The good news is that identity is not fixed. You can shift your identity by proving to yourself through small, consistent actions that you are the kind of person who takes disciplined action. If you want to be a writer, start writing daily, even if it's just a few sentences. If you want to be fit, commit to moving your body every day. At first, it might feel unnatural, but the more you act in alignment with your desired identity, the more real it becomes. Eventually, you won't have to force yourself to act a certain way. It will be automatic because that's simply who you are. One of the best ways to build a strong identity is to eliminate any language that contradicts the person you want to become. Stop saying, I'm bad at staying focused, or I always procrastinate. Every time you say those words, you reinforce that identity and make it harder to change. Instead, start saying, I am the type of person who gets things done, or I am disciplined and focused. At first, it might feel like you're just saying words, but over time, your actions will begin to align with this new identity. Another powerful strategy is to create rules for yourself that match your new identity. If you want to be someone who is disciplined, set a rule that you never hit the snooze button. If you want to be someone who works hard, set a rule that you never skip 2 days in a row of working toward your goal. These small commitments help solidify your new identity. And once your identity is set, discipline becomes natural. Your identity is like a thermostat. It controls your level of performance. If you see yourself as a mediocre performer, even if you work hard for a while, you will eventually slip back to that level. But if you raise your identity to match a higher standard, you will naturally act in alignment with it. This is why some people always seem to be disciplined, consistent, and successful. It's because they see themselves that way. Changing your identity takes time, but every small action you take in alignment with your goals strengthens your belief in yourself. The more you act like the person you want to become, the sooner you will realize that it's not just an act, it's who you truly are. And once you reach that level, discipline is no longer something you have to force. It simply becomes a part of you. Your environment has a powerful influence on your habits, productivity, and overall discipline. Whether you realize it or not, the people you surround yourself with, the spaces you spend time in, and the daily cues around you all shape your behavior. If you struggle to stay disciplined, it's not just about willpower, it's also about the environment you've built around yourself. If your environment makes it easy to be distracted, procrastinate, or give up, then you'll constantly feel like you're fighting an uphill battle. But if you design an environment that supports discipline and focus, success becomes much easier. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that discipline is purely a mental battle. They think they just need to be stronger, more focused, or more motivated. But in reality, much of our behavior is shaped by external triggers. If your phone is always within reach, it will constantly tempt you. If your workspace is cluttered and chaotic, it will be harder to concentrate. If you spend time with people who don't take their goals seriously, you'll struggle to stay committed to yours. Instead of relying on willpower to resist these influences, the smarter approach is to structure your environment in a way that eliminates distractions and reinforces good habits. Start by assessing your physical space. If you want to be productive, create a workspace that promotes focus. Keep your desk clean, remove distractions, and organize your tools so that everything you need is easily accessible. If your phone is a constant source of distraction, put it in another room while you work. If social media tempts you, use website blockers to limit your access during work hours. The easier you make it to stay focused, the less energy you have to waste on fighting temptation. Your home environment also plays a huge role in shaping your habits. If you want to eat healthier, don't fill your kitchen with junk food. If you want to read more, leave books in places where you'll see them often. If you want to exercise regularly, set out your workout clothes the night before. These small adjustments remove friction and make discipline feel effortless. Just as important as your physical environment is your social environment. The people around you influence your behavior more than you think. If you spend time with people who are lazy, unmotivated, or constantly making excuses, their mindset will rub off on you. But if you surround yourself with disciplined, driven, and ambitious individuals, you will naturally adopt their habits. This is why successful people are careful about who they spend time with. They choose to be around people who push them to be better, who challenge them, and who hold them accountable. If you don't have people like that in your immediate circle, seek them out. Join groups, attend events, or follow mentors who inspire you. Engage with communities that value discipline and hard work. Even if you don't interact with them directly, simply being in an environment where success is the norm will shift your mindset and reinforce the behaviors you want to adopt. Most people rely on motivation to get things done, but motivation is unpredictable. Some days you wake up feeling inspired and ready to take action, but other days you feel sluggish and unmotivated. If you base your work ethic on motivation alone, you'll always struggle with inconsistency. The real secret to getting things done, even when you don't feel like it, is developing strong habits. Habits remove the need for motivation because they make action automatic. When something becomes a habit, you don't think about whether or not you should do it. You just do it. Think about brushing your teeth. You don't need to feel motivated to brush your teeth every morning. You don't debate with yourself about whether it's worth doing. It's simply part of your routine. That's the level of consistency you need to build with your work, your health, and your personal goals. When you train yourself to act out of habit rather than emotion, you eliminate the struggle of deciding whether or not to work. You just follow through because that's what you do. One of the biggest benefits of habits is that they conserve energy. When you rely on motivation, you waste time and mental effort debating with yourself. Should I start now or later? Should I skip today? All of this drains your energy before you even begin. But when you have a habit in place, you remove the decision-making process entirely. You don't have to think, you just act. And that makes discipline much easier to maintain. To build strong habits, start small. A common mistake people make is trying to overhaul their entire routine overnight. They go from never exercising to trying to work out for an hour every day. Or they go from writing nothing to trying to write 2,000 words daily. This approach is overwhelming and it usually leads to burnout. Instead, start with small, manageable actions. If you want to develop a writing habit, start with just 5 minutes a day. If you want to work out regularly, commit to 10 minutes of movement. These small actions build momentum and make it easier to stick to your routine. Consistency is more important than intensity. A short, consistent habit is far more powerful than an intense effort that you can't maintain. It's better to write 200 words every day than to write 5,000 words once a month. It's better to exercise for 15 minutes every day than to work out for 2 hours and then quit for a week. Small daily actions add up over time and lead to massive results. One of the best ways to make a habit stick is to tie it to something you already do. This is called habit stacking. For example, if you want to start reading more, you can commit to reading 1 page after you drink your morning coffee. If you want to start meditating, you can do it right after brushing your teeth. By attaching a new habit to an existing routine, you make it easier to remember and follow through. Another powerful way to reinforce habits is by tracking your progress. When you see a streak of days where you've consistently followed through on your habit, you'll feel motivated to keep it going. A simple calendar or habit tracking app can help you stay accountable. The more you track your progress, the more invested you become in maintaining consistency. Habits are what separate successful people from those who struggle with inconsistency. The most disciplined people in the world don't rely on motivation to get things done. They rely on habits. They have routines in place that make success automatic. They don't waste time deciding whether or not to act, they just follow through. When you build strong habits, discipline stops feeling like a struggle and starts feeling like second nature. And once you reach that point, success becomes inevitable. Discipline is not about waiting for the perfect moment, feeling motivated, or relying on willpower. It's about taking control of your actions, eliminating negotiation, and building habits that make success inevitable. When you train yourself to act regardless of how you feel, when you shape your environment to support your goals, and when you adopt an identity that aligns with discipline, you remove the struggle of inconsistency. The most successful people in the world don't rely on fleeting bursts of motivation. They create systems, routines, and mindsets that make action automatic. The same power is in your hands. Stop waiting, stop negotiating, and start moving forward. Over time, what once felt like a battle will become second nature, and you'll realize that true discipline isn't a burden, it's freedom. Freedom from procrastination, self-doubt, and wasted potential. The choice is yours. Will you take action or keep waiting for the right moment?